because I appreciate the feedback. How does one know? For instance, you said 5th, 6th, 7th acts. Well, how do you know? That's part of the issue. Is it time for Act 2, or is it time to double down and continue on Act 1? And then, what are the things that you've started to find in your preliminary research that enable people to reinvent themselves? Because I personally, being on YouTube, I think of PewDiePie, who's the biggest YouTuber and has reinvented himself. I don't know if you know this, half dozen or more times. Just he's doing video games now. He's doing news now. He's doing this, and he seems to follow his interest.
Yeah, this Peter and I say this all. Peter Diamandis is my co-writer in the Futures Fest, and we say this a lot because people always like, how do I build a business in the future? And what I always say is, here's the greatest thing about all this accelerating technology is it all comes with user-friendly interfaces. So that we tell a story in the book about quantum computing. Let's just say this is the craziest sci-fi technology, right, ever, and now it's real. And one of the places it's real is in Berkeley, California at Rigetti Computing. And when we talk about that, and here's the crazy part, quantum computing is the most far future technology you could possibly imagine. You could go to rigetti.com right now. You can download for free Forest, which is their app developer's kit for the quantum world. And you can run programs on Forest. Over 1 million programs have been run by normal people. So every single accelerating technology has a user-friendly interface.
And I just read this chapter, so correct me just to give people a little bit of grounding here. So Moore's law is that transistors shrink in size and they double in power every short 18 months or something.
Exactly.
This breaks Moore's law to the extreme in the positive direction, which is to say it goes even beyond exponential of that.
It gets really, so quantum is it's a weird thing, right? Because with Moore's law you have bits. They're binary, on, off. Because of how quantum dynamics work, you have 4 options or more. So the way we always explain, so that qubits are bits in quantum computing. So right now we're at a 50 qubit computer. Google just announced it. It's sort of, that was the line was, they called it quantum supremacy, which is we built a quantum computer that can solve a problem, it was a mathematical problem, that a classical computer, a traditional computer can't solve. So we just crossed that. We're about 50 qubits. 50 qubit computer, and Google didn't, it's not a really robust working, we're not really there, but let's just say we are. We're not quite there yet. That's basically 50 million songs stored on an iPod. It's a lot of storage, a lot of power, it's a lot of memory. If we bump that up to 80 qubits, so I just add 30 qubits to it, like not a huge shift. The Rigetti quantum computer that was to the previous generation of Google's quantum supremacy that you can access is 32 qubits. So we went from 32, a year and a half later, I think it was 50, right? So we'll get to 80 fairly quickly, a couple of years. If every atom in the universe could store 1 bit of information, an 80 qubit computer has more processing power than all the atoms in the universe. That's what it's huge. Now, what does it mean in real life? Like text 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Because quantum isn't quite there. It's coming very soon though, this decade. And the low-hanging fruit is drug discovery and material science. So new materials, which is great for solar and some of the environmental technology, really fantastic for that. Low-hanging fruit is drug discovery, new compounds. That's what's gonna shift first.
Fast.
I have a follow-up question that's completely self-interested. So I think one of the things that Charlie is struggling with is after doing the same creative pursuit over and over and over, there's a bit of burnout, which is to say something that was fun is not fun, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, so, depending on who I'm covering, yeah.
So in terms of leaning in, it's not so much like, oh, where do I get the effort from? It's like, oh, this used to be fun.
So I will tell you, I've written 13 books. Every book, I set myself a different writing challenge. So like there's my content challenge, what am I trying to communicate? And then there's a level up, make it harder. Sometimes it's, this last year was, could I write 3 books in a year? I could, but it nearly killed me.
The answer is barely.
Barely, and really hard, and never will I do it again. But bold was, could I write a business book that doesn't suck? Because business books suck. They're terribly written. The stories are bad. They're not. They make up all their own terms so they can brand things their own way, and you can't follow it.
And then they sell you the seminar,
right?
in chapter 3.
The whole thing is
join
like,
the workshop.
Exactly. And so, like, you know, sometimes it's essentially with Stealing Fire, it was fact density per sentence. So you talked earlier about cognitive load, right? How much stuff can you hold in your head at one time? So we have this, when we read, every time you see a punctuation mark, especially a period, you're pausing, your brain pauses and it offloads things out of like working memory into it's like medium-term storage kind of thing, or it throws it out. And so sentences can hold a certain amount of facts and blah, blah. In Stealing the Fire, I had to write a denser style of sentence than I'd ever had to write before. And I also wanted to be a little funnier than some of my other books because I thought the material needed some of that. And so I tried to, I always said Stephen Pinker was my model for density. And there were a couple of other models for humor. And that was the challenge in Stealing Fire. So I think you have to raise the challenge level, right? So, you know, the question, we were talking earlier about the thing you bailed on, which was Dave Chappelle and the comedic simile.
Yeah.
Right? You bailed on it in the video. Well, and you said there's no way I could do that in 30 seconds, right? I could do 4 minutes on it, but how do I? Well, there's a great freaking challenge. Like, that's what I mean by that. Like, lean in.
And so how do you pick a challenge that will create flow instead of be demoralizing or frustrating?
So,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm gonna come at it a little sideways, but this is one of the things we see in peak performance, and I sort of think it's foundational. So if you're interested in flow long term, the first thing we teach you is how do you turn curiosity into passion, passion into purpose, and then add in autonomy and mastery to the stack. These are the 5 biggest intrinsic motivators, and they're designed to work together, right? Curiosity gets built into passion. Passion gets turned into purpose. Once you have purpose, you can know what to do with your autonomous time. Oh, I can spend my time advancing my purpose. And then mastery, the last motivator, is the skills that required to accomplish my purpose, right? And you have to stack all of these in a row, right? So when we talked about finding and to prepare for this future, right? Like, because of these user-friendly interfaces, whatever you're interested in, there's going to be a technology there, right? So you literally can follow your passion into the future. So Cutie Pie on that is totally right. You really can. We always tell Peter, and I tell people, figure out what you're passionate about, figure out where it intersects some kind of problem in the world that you'd like to see solved. There's a technology that's sitting right there.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have to hop in here because I was talking to my brother yesterday, and he said, I wish I was passionate about something. I'm not passionate about anything. And I went, what are you talking about? Like, I see you all the time talking about basketball and playing in your free time. And like, people have this view of passion that automatically incorporates what they think is a viable business or career decision.
They self-censor.
And it's just like, get that out of there, because as you're saying, it's all a viable business decision to some degree. I was playing video games when I was a kid. Every adult in my life told me, what are you going to do? Play video games for a living?
Yes, actually.
Turns out. Absolutely.
Turns out.
Making more money.
Leave me alone.
Dan DMT, anybody?
Exactly.
Right?
So, and I see that in people. So the question is, you're doing something in your free time. I know you have free time, even if it's television, and if it's going, well, that show doesn't work, or that show doesn't work because, you know, that's what I do. I say this joke, you know, I was looking at my cool friends and going, how come everyone laughs at him when he tells a joke but not at me?
Right.
That's my job now.
Right.
So I just have to jump in and say, everyone has a passion. I truly believe it, and I think it's more obvious than people give it credit for.
So let's just make it more practical. So you can just search my name in the passion recipe. I wrote this for Forbes as a column, but I tell people, start by making a list of 25 things you're curious about. And by curious, all I'm saying is, hey, if time didn't matter and money didn't matter and you had a free weekend, you would want to read a couple of books on this subject, maybe attend a couple of lectures, maybe sit down and have a conversation or two with an expert, right? That's all I mean you're curious about it. Make a list of 25 things you're curious about. There's not enough energy in a single curiosity to create passion, but if you can find a place 3 or 4 or 5 of your curiosities actually intersect, you actually have the foundation of passion, right? So look for intersections of multiple curiosities. Where did they overlay? And I'll give you, you know, the take, I mean, I'm not going to give you an example because the one that's probably in my mind is the example that's going to open my new book, and I'm not going to give it away. I'm not giving it to you guys. I like you guys, but not that much.
Trust me, we're not that hard of workers that we'd beat you to.
Yeah.
No. It's just that I want to like keep it as a surprise for my readers.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to steal his stuff, or
my new book, Stealing Ideas.
Stealing ideas. Stealing ideas. I don't know if that.
So got it. So
okay.
You've got a couple of curiosities, yeah, and then,
So just look at for the intersection of multiple curiosities, right? And
I've written down some questions too that I had in here, but you guys can continue. I'm just going to pull them up real quick.
Yeah. Well, what about when you have a passion for your work and then you lose it? How do you stoke it back?
That's an interesting question. Usually, I would up the challenge level. Usually, I would find a way to up the challenge level, get myself curious again. But that's, I think, sort of a personal answer, much more than a biological answer. I'm giving you what would work for me.
I need new projects personally.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I don't give up on the old stuff. I organize my life differently.
Organize your wife.
My wife. But I've got there's 3 things that I sort of do on this planet, right? And there's about 3 things I got to do for those 3 things to work. And that's my filter. And those are big mission statement goals. Mm-hmm. So what is the high, hard goal that gets me closer? Maybe it's a book. Maybe it's a magazine article. Maybe it's a film. Maybe it's a class. Maybe, right? Those vehicles can change, and I will mix those up to keep it super interesting.
Mm-hmm. So this is the downside of psychedelics: is when your purpose stops being making money or even changing other people, and it becomes, how do I get good at sitting on a mountaintop for a week alone and being joyful?
That's my purpose.
Work production plummets as your pursuit of that goal increases.
Not a problem.
It's a problem for me because it's not my goal; it's my business partner's goal.
I'll tell you about my meditation.
I see.